It's possible that she could have been somebody that went in the top 4 or 5. What makes you think of her talent that highly and how excited you could have gotten right now?
I mean, look, she is the Defensive Player of the Year.
First and foremost, she's a winner. I mean, she's won at every level. She's set the tone at every level. She's immediately ready on the defensive end of the floor. She's immediately ready on the defensive end of the floor, which is something that we need. We need somebody who can come in and make an impact on that end of the floor. We need somebody who can come in and make an impact on that end of the floor.
What's up, Fever Nation? Great game by the team yesterday. There were also some good individual performances that we're going to talk about in this video. First off, let's give the 10th overall pick props for doing what they drafted her for, playing defense. If Raven Johnson doesn't have the defensive performance she had, then drafting her made no sense. Never had an issue with her as a defensive player. She was Defensive Player of the Year in the SEC. That's what they drafted her for. That's what Amber Cox said in the interview on draft night, and that's what Stephanie White said. Some of you all are acting like you weren't sure she could play defense at the pro level. She was called elite. In some interviews, Stephanie White or Amber Cox said she would be elite at the pro level, an elite defensive player at the pro level. So when she does what she is supposed to do, why are we going out of our way to try to make it seem like it's a performance of performances? Dominant performances, great performances. You're not giving her anything to build on if you're calling, 6 points, 8 assists, 3 blocks, 2 steals? Great? That's great? That's dominant? What does it become if she does more than that or less? So if she does less than that, then it's a good performance. You see how low they set the bar on great? And I'm not taking any away from Raven Johnson. I'm glad she played as well as she did defensively.
Congratulations on the win. My question is for Raven Johnson. Oh, I'm Christina, by the way, sorry. Leave it at Christina, Unanimous Media. You looked really comfortable out there today. How would you assess your first WNBA games?
I was ready. In college, our coach always say, when your number's called, be ready. So I know when my number's called, I was ready. And it started in practice, like things in practice. I pay attention. I ask a lot of questions. Have good vets on this team that make me comfortable and instill confidence in me. So I knew I was ready when my number's called.
Steph, what's your evaluation of Raven's debut and also the depth in the backcourt? What's going to be possible with the guards you got?
Yeah, I mean, I thought Raven did a great job. Certainly we know what she can bring on the defensive end of the floor. Certainly we know what she can bring on the defensive end of the floor. She's going to continue to bring that night in and night out. And then she's going to just learn on the offensive end, learn what we're looking to get out of certain actions, learn how to create the matchups that we want, learn how to create advantage. It's different than in college. And she's a sponge. She asks a lot of questions, which I love. She's a sponge. She asks a lot of questions, which I love. We'll watch film and continue to grow, but you can't teach the instincts. You can't teach those go-go gadget arms, and the length and her ability to recover. And so it's just going to continue to grow.
The reporter is going to ask Coach White, what about Caitlin Clark returning to the floor from last season and Team USA basketball? What was your assessment of her? And I want you to listen to the generic answer when she's talking about her superstar. Now, she had a lot of great things to say about Raven Johnson, someone who's just came on board. Look at the difference in the way she describes Raven Johnson versus Caitlin Clark.
And then just your evaluation of Caitlin's first game back in the W. I know she was with USA Basketball, but do you feel like she's still shaking off some rust, or how would you evaluate her?
Yeah, I thought she was good. I think we play differently when she's on the floor, and so again, learning how to play with her in the action. I think we play differently when she's on the floor, and so again, learning how to play with her in the action.
She says we play differently when she is on the floor, learning how to play with her in the interaction. Translation: she's not running my offense. She's playing spontaneity. She's not doing anything. She's trying to create space which a point guard is supposed to do on the fly. It may not always work like it's drawn up. So you have to be able to change it on the fly. In a sense, almost build the plane while you're flying. Because at some point during the season, everybody is going to know what you're running. But one thing they can't be prepared for is spontaneity.
I thought she was good. I thought she didn't force anything. She played with great intention, and everything that she did was in the flow. She was communicating at a high level. I mean, if we're talking about the shot making, like that's going to come. They play her differently in the W than they do in international basketball. They play her differently in the W than they do in international basketball, and so we've just got to find ways to free her up to get her some easy looks. And so we've just got to find ways to free her up to get her some easy looks.
Did you catch that, Fever Nation? She said they play her differently in international basketball than they do in the WNBA. They play her differently. She's saying, oh, her performance wouldn't have been MVP if it was the WNBA. Well, the WNBA allows a lot more contact against one player in the league than they do against most other players in the WNBA, for one thing. FIBA got that in check. The contact, the fouls, they got that in check. They didn't call everything, but they weren't allowing players to be mauled like they do in the WNBA. But here's the kicker. Stephanie White was on the coaching staff. She was on the bench watching the performance of Caitlin Clark doing that. And now she says in this interview, which lets you know that performance is still fresh in her mind, that they don't play the defense the way we do in the WNBA. Really, Stephanie? Really, Stephanie? That's so Stephanie. And finally, as we're about to wrap this up, there were two other rookies that had great, according to Stephanie's metrics, great performances as well. What about Jessica Timmons? What about her performance? She looked confident shooting from the field. She looked very confident. As a matter of fact, I know Tyisha Harris was injured, and my little makeshift roster or preseason roster, I put Tyisha Harris. I didn't even know Timmons had that kind of game. What about Timmons' performance, Coach White? She sat in this entire interview and only gave one player credit for that entire game. Are you serious? What about Justine Passau? 10 minutes, 8 points, 1 assist. I got to check the rebounds. But what about Justine Passau, who was getting off her shot with the quickness? The way she was getting off that shot was on a elite level, and she was knocking it down. But not a word from Coach White. Not one word from Coach White. Coach White, if you're going to have some tough decisions to make at the point guard, I'm glad Passau is not a point guard, but I heard she handled the ball a little bit at Vanderbilt. We're not going to bring up Vandy. She played the ball. She played on ball a little bit, but she was knocking down shots. She was getting off her shots fearlessly. Nothing about the other rookies. Nothing about the other two rookies. And I say, look, it's going to be tough making this 12-man roster for some people. But I think some people have made a clear case to be on the 12-man roster. Jessica Timmons and Justine Passau, it's going to be a tough argument trying to leave them off. And I dare say Passau, if she doesn't make this team, it's a conspiracy.